Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals. Please turn off all cell phones or other devices that may disrupt these proceedings. It is the duty of this board to consider requests for relief from the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, to consider conditional use permit requests and to hear administrative appeals. The board conducts business in the following order: review, amend, and approve minutes from previous meeting or meetings. Move to unfinished business, take up new business, and then we move to announcements from staff. Each request is heard in the order that it appears on the agenda. For each conditional use and variance request, the following is done. We will introduce the agenda item, and the Planning Division will present a staff report, which may or may not offer a recommendation. The applicant agent will be asked to present their justification for the request, which may include questions by members of the board. We will then open a public hearing to hear testimony in support of or in opposition to the request. Rules regarding public testimony are as follows. Anyone wishing to testify during the public hearing may do so once recognized by the board, by me, or may, in lieu of oral testimony, submit written testimony to the chair. All recognized speakers must approach the podium, state their name and address audibly for the record, and speak clearly into the microphone. All comments must be addressed to the board, should be relevant to the application, and may not be of a personal nature or personal attacks. All speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the speaker, that time will not be counted toward the total of 5 minutes. If there is a large number of speakers, including many who are part of groups or organizations, I may, to avoid repetitive comments, elect to ask for a representative to speak on behalf of the group or organization. Speakers are notified that irrelevant comments or comments of a personal nature or personal attacks may result in the speaker forfeiting his or her opportunity to participate in the public hearing. I may elect to recognize the applicant agent at the end of the public hearing to provide rebuttal or additional comments, which will be limited to an additional 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the applicant agent, that time will not be counted toward the 5 minutes. After all testimony is heard, we will declare the public hearing closed and gavel it closed, and no further public comment will be permitted. Uncivil, unruly, and or disruptive behavior at any time during this meeting is prohibited and will result in removal from this public meeting. State law requires the board to consider findings of fact for each conditional use and variance request. The request cannot be granted unless a majority of the quorum present finds in the positive of all of the findings of fact. The board may elect to continue the hearing to another date if it needs additional information. Applicants and requesting parties will be notified in writing by the Planning Division of the board's findings and conclusions, regardless of whether a request is approved or denied. Decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Monongalia County within 30 days upon receipt of that written notification. Any work done relating to decisions rendered by this board during that 30-day appeals window or period is at the sole financial risk of the applicant. Thank you for your consideration and respect for these proceedings and the opinions of all in attendance. So, call to order. Ms. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Schomburger.
Here.
Mr. Benson is here, and we do note that we do have a quorum so that we can continue with this meeting. We're considering meeting minutes from our regular July 17, 2024, 6:30 p.m. meeting. Any additions or issues, or I didn't see any either. We don't really need, well, let's move just to make it official.
I move to accept the meetings from July 17th, 2024.
And I will second that motion to consider and accept meeting minutes from July 17th, 2024. How do we vote? Aye. So moved and approved for
Thank
those
you.
meeting minutes. So we're going to move to new, we don't have any old business
No, sir.
apart from just consideration of meeting minutes. New business, the first case this evening is zoning variance VAR 24-135. City Neon, Inc., referenced as 514 North High Street, request by Ms. Miller on behalf of the business property owner for 304 Canteen for variance relief from Article 1369 regarding the size, internal illumination, and materials of signage. This is City Tax District 13 in the 5th Ward, Tax Map 26, Parcel 124 in the B4 General Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank-
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to go off the pictures in your packet are also up on the screen for the public to see, but the applicant is requesting, as you mentioned, two wall-mounted signs in the establishment. One would face North High Street, the other would face Prospect Street. Together, they would encompass approximately 26.34 square feet of signage. When we looked at, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you can see the existing conditions. This is a Google Street View, and the applicant also provided a photograph in their application that was uploaded to the new CityWorks portal. But as you can see, there's a cluster of signs there, all pre-existing, non-conforming. The plan is to remove those signs and replace them with new wall-mounted signs. As you can see here, there's two different styles. I'm not sure if the decision's been made, one of each on each side of the building, but that's what the signage looks like. And then this is the proposed location here and where they will be going. So they'll actually be reducing a nonconformity with respect to signage in the B1 district. When we looked at the application closer, it was determined that even though the initial request was for max wall signage area, given that the property is at a corner lot, it has two fronts. And so we included the tenant building frontage on Prospect Street. And with that, the variance is no longer needed for the maximum sign allowance allowed. So the two requests tonight before you is a sign variant, for the sign variance is for the material, the acrylic type, and for the internal illumination. And that will include staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Do we have a representative? Hello there. Thank you. Good. Thank you.
So I'm here representing 34 Canteen. The canteen has been here in this location since the 30s. I think 1937 was the official date that I found. So it's changed very little over the years in terms of the square footage of the actual restaurant area. Small changes here and there, but the signage, has changed over the years due to trends. There used to be suspended signs and so forth. Currently, there are 2 signs on the Prospect side and 5 on the High Street side. All 7 of those signs are aluminum box cabinet signs with acrylic and vinyl details added to those. So because of the current code, those are considered non-conforming. There is evidence that at one point those signs were internally illuminated, which is also non-conforming. In an effort to modernize the space with the new ownership, they would like to propose removing the 7 existing signs, bringing that down to 2 signs, 1 on each side, 1 on each street, in order to streamline the aesthetic of the exterior. It will reduce actually the amount of illumination. If the existing cabinets were there and just illuminated, this would be far less because, there's about a 60 square foot difference in the existing signs and then what we're proposing. So it would take away a lot of the visual clutter from each elevation of the building. So we're asking for internal
And then-
illumination in the materials. Sorry.
So in terms of the internal illumination, And then, so the new ones, they'll be cabinet too, or it's gonna be more,
They are the channel letter sets, which are a dimensional, 3D dimensional letter that extends out from the building.
right?
As opposed to just a square cabinet.
And then, will it be on a will the signs be on a timer? Or is it just going to be,
There are two
I
ways
think
that we
it
can
applies.
control the illumination, and that is by timer, where you would set when they would turn on and when they would turn off. Generally, those are set based on the business hours and the actual, like, the lighting of the exterior. Or it could be set on a photocell, which a photocells would come on when the light conditions are dark enough, so it would come on during the day if it were dark enough.
right?
So it could be set in two different ways, either the timer or the photocell.
So the whole sign's gonna be lighted?
Yes. On the dark blue, that would be a really subtle lighting, and then the most illumination would come from your white
Okay,
and then your yellow,
okay.
which is actually minimal in those designs. So it would be a nice glow, and then the white and the yellow would pop more for definition.
Do you have any concerns in terms of like output or? Mr. Schultz, do you have any questions? Mr. Schultz?
Right, thank you.
Is there a, so I see the utility, just trying to get an idea of how this will look at night. Can you speak to, there's a utility pole right there, is there maybe municipal lighting on that, just in terms of trying to get a sense for, you know, the atmospherics at night?
Do you know if there's a street light there?
There is.
There
Yeah,
is,
there
so
is.
there is a street light on
It's
the
already
corner.
well lit. Street light.
And you don't think, I mean, we want your signage to be effective, just wayfinding and branding your property. Did you factor that in, just in terms of like,
Yeah, if I.
I mean,
we
the other
did,
signs have
it
been
would
there too
still
in the
be
street.
able to show, but it actually, the illumination from these lights will
It won't de-
absolutely not affect, actually, it will not light it up any more than, actually will lessen it with these lights compared to what the
Oh, really?
current signs are, yes.
All right,
Because he's speaking to, in the original shot, there are, like, on that front span, there are 5 box cabinets there, and
Right.
each box cabinet has a light that shines onto it, because they're not internally
Onto it, yeah.
illuminated at the moment, that shines onto it. So you're reducing 5 lights on the front facade.
right. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask that the owner state their name and address for the record, just so the comments were
Yeah,
given?
did-
Sorry.
Thank you.
You're
Ms.
fine.
Mullen.
Yes. Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Bailey, and my address is 116 Legacy Drive, Morgantown, West Virginia. And we are the owners of the building, and then we'll be opening up the 304 Canteen in April.
Right, oh, good.
Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
thank you.
Yep.
Any additional comments, or?
I
Thank you
can't
for the
think of any
background.
at the moment. All right.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to VA 24-135, please do so now. Did you want to offer any?
Well, yeah, I can.
At
Do I need
this
to state
time?
my name again?
You do.
Okay, so that's good. Just real quickly, we bought all of the properties, not only where the canteen is, but all of the rental houses behind there, a total of 27 units, 2 years ago. And we've worked really long and hard at, we take a lot of pride in that, and we've worked long and hard in the outside and inside of all the rental houses. And so now it's time to make the improvements that we want to and really help the aesthetics of the neighborhood. We just feel like the current signs that are from the, we're guessing 50s or 60s are a bit much, and it needs cleaned up. You know, that's a representation of that community and around the university, and I'm sure, you know, everybody would do it. When we do things, we like to do it right, and we're really excited to serve the community, and we're going to be making a good bit of improvements also interior of the place. But we know that the signs are an eyesore, the current signs, and we want to do things the right way. So, any questions from?
No, this isn't. Any questions at this time? Well, no, but just in relation to his comments in support of his own application. All right,
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Discussion? Seems fairly. Right, with regard to the area, certainly, which is, I don't think we've seen that in a while. Right, so, well done. The illumination seems fairly straightforward. In terms, you know, not that we have a case where directly comparing this application property to, but the internal illumination is not really anything unusual.
Right.
Actually, I have one more question for the applicant.
Go right ahead.
Just a quick question, because we see this a lot, and this is more for my own information, but what is the hardship imposed by not being allowed for your materials variance?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what I have in the application.
What, yeah.
I mean,
so-
it's comparable to what is actually existing. I realize that it's non-conforming to the current code, but it is comparable to what is existing. And then,
Yeah, just.
this space is open during evening hours. It will help with directing patrons to the facility.
So I guess in other words, if you went with materials that you wouldn't need to seek a variance for, if you used those alternate materials, would that, because I don't think we really have an issue with the internal illumination, but if you went with materials for which you wouldn't have to seek a variance, would using those materials would it be problematic in terms of going with the internal illumination?
Generally speaking, when you go with internal illumination, acrylic is
It's
pretty
the
much
best choice.
right.
Because so in other
even
words,
when
it's
we
an
use-
industry standard then.
It is an industry standard, because even when we use like push-through signs, the acrylic is still used for that clear surface in order for the illumination to shine through. Glass would be another clear surface that could be used, but then you have the threat of breakage.
Right.
It's not as durable of a material over time.
Okay, thank you.
And maintain, yeah, well, and just, maybe glass is harder to maintain too.
Yeah, it's just not as durable. It doesn't take the impact that an acrylic would. It's more expensive over time, like, because you would be replacing it quite frequently. There's
Right.
always the threat of damage, either from
Hail.
elements
Hail, yeah.
and so forth.
Because, so the current, like the cabinet material, can you speak to that, just to compare the current with what's proposed?
It is an acrylic,
It's acrylic.
it's acrylic face, and then it has
And there's a
vinyl.
reason for that.
Right. It lasts forever, literally.
Does that
Yes. Yeah.
speak to your,
I'm good.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So with that, looking at the findings of fact, this does, finding of fact number 3, the unnecessary hardship. I think a case could be made there for maintainability. The business will be able to replace the aging exterior signage and be able to mitigate concerns about maintainability and improve wayfinding, I would say, because
Right.
given what she said, the acrylic allows for the illumination to be more effective.
Is it all right, Mr. Yeager, if we
I,
add that verbiage to finding of fact
you'll have
3?
to, the way I would have said, go ahead. What was, can you say that one more time, or I can try to?
Oh, what I was saying is, I'd like to add something in there about maintainability and improvement, well, improving the effectiveness of the internal illumination.
So could we maybe reword that to say, and this is, I think, 1, 2, 3, this is the third variance request, findings of fact?
Yes.
The business was able to replace the aging exterior signage and effectively advertise during evening hours, as well as improve the longevity out of the signage.
Yeah, works for me.
And increase the maintainability of the proposed signage?
If that's the word, I use longevity, just durability, or, you know, that'd be another way to describe it, or,
Yeah,
Whichever, longevity, durability.
let's,
Is that all right if we add that?
yeah, it's,
Okay.
you'll need to, when you get to the findings of fact, include that, yeah.
You know, and they reference, they would like with regard to the first finding of fact, they would like the opportunity to utilize internal illumination like many of the businesses in the downtown area. I mean, it's, by definition, the internal illumination increases the degree of nonconformity, but it's a reasonable request in terms of the use of the property, the best use of the property. That's, and the current application isn't making an unusual request with regard to internal illumination.
Right, so can I make a motion?
Please do.
Do you-
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you-
I
do
move
you-
that we,
Do you want me to just do
Oh,
staff?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So after review, staff had no comments or modifications to the finding of facts as proposed, but we've just had that discussion, so I made a note of that. And then, as is customary, staff does not provide recommendations on issues regarding signage.
okay,
Right.
cool.
And then we just want to be specific about you're not proposing any conditions.
Correct.
With regard to the application.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So now we can proceed to the motion.
So I move that we accept the findings of fact in the packet as amended by Mr. Schomburger. And,
And that's the third finding of fact, to be
Yes, the
specific.
third.
Yes, sir.
yes.
And that will be included in
The minutes.
the official legal record,
Yes.
that change, emendation. All right, I second the motion made by Ms. Cook with the slight change to the third finding of fact as referenced on page 17 of the meeting packet. How do we vote on the findings of fact?
Aye.
So we're approving, or we're agreeing with the findings of fact referenced for this case, which again is VR 24-135. Do we have a motion to grant the variance for this?
Yes, I move that we grant the variance for this case.
And again, we have amended the third finding of fact. We want to mention specifically there are no conditions proposed by planning. So we have a motion to grant this variance for, again, case VR 24-135. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We granted your variance. Keep in mind, as we mentioned at the outset of this meeting, well, you receive written notification generally within 7 to 10 business days from planning, but keep in mind, any work you undertake during this period is at your sole financial risk, because our decisions are, can be called into, well, not called into question, but appealed in the Circuit Court of Montague County. So just keep that in mind. 30-day period. Thank you very much for coming down this evening.
Thank you.
very much.
You're welcome. Good luck with your endeavors.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to the next case, we have VA 24-136, City Neon, at 1046 University Avenue, request by Ms. Miller on behalf of University Tobacco and Vape for variance relief from Article 1369 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding the size, internal illumination, and materials of signage, City Tax District 11 in the 3rd Ward, Tax Map 28A, Parcel 27 in the B4 General Business District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, here's the location on University Avenue, the Hardy World Deck project. This is for Google Street View. You can see the Starbucks. The underground printing is on the right-hand side, and in the center where the arrow is kind of blending into the facade. That's where the new tenant location or the new establishment is operating. Staff did confirm that the tenant building frontage for that particular location is 30 feet, so that entitles them to a max wall signage area of 12 square feet. And based on the calculations of the signage, which you will see here, if you look at the two line bars, how they're going to be attached to the building, and look at them kind of independently, which is what the code looks at, whether we want the smallest area in order to calculate the max sign area. It's approximately 9 square feet, so that actual variance request is no longer needed. However, given the type of materials, again, acrylic for the channel letters, as well as the illumination, that's what's being requested at this time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Do we have someone to present? Thank you very much.
Hello, again. Crystal Miller, City Neon. We are here representing University Tobacco and Vape. This is our second time discussing this building. The owners of the deck have a strict sign code for the building, and that is internally illuminated channel letters on a raceway. And if you look on that photo there, the brown rectangular portion behind each set of letters is the raceway, and that is essentially an aluminum box that minimizes the number of punctures that go into the building facade. So that is why they prefer a raceway, because it minimizes damage to the building's facade. It also, with them requiring channel letters of every unit, it keeps the aesthetic similar across the property for their benefit. That's what they prefer for this site. Each tenant is allowed their own design of the channel letters. As you see, the neighbor underground printing went with their logo. Tobacco and Vape has kept it very simple, just for readability from the setback. There's approximately an 80-foot setback from the storefront to the nearest edge of the roadway. And that is across a parking lot which has two sets of lengthwise parking areas, and then the roadway in between those that goes around the building for the Starbucks drive-through. So in an effort to combat that, they would like it internally illuminated for aesthetic, and then it also helps with the wayfinding from University Avenue.
So the setback, it is 80 feet.
80 feet.
Any questions at this time? Thank you. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, not at this moment.
Thank you very much. All right, so you didn't have any questions, right? Before we open?
Nope.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to VA 24-136 at 1046 University Avenue, please do so now. Seeing no one, close the public hearing. So finding some facts.
Oh,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're fine. So staff had no additional questions or concerns or comments regarding the finding of the facts provided, and again, as is customary, staff does not comment on sign variance
And
applications.
No conditions for this one either?
No conditions, sir.
I have a little bit of an issue with, I think in the findings of fact, can we find ways to word these so that we're not saying the property owner's specific criteria? Is there a way to make this?
Mr. Schummer, what's your, which finding of fact?
Let's,
Well, the third one.
well, second and third.
And I apologize, because we have this new system, we haven't been able to run the report so that it's much more readable. So I apologize, it's kind of a smaller font. But it's
Yeah.
the third finding of fact?
The second, third, and
Second.
third, and fourth. We need to do a little. Like, the variance arises from special conditions or attributes to pertain, and were not created by. Oh wait. You know, that actually might work for the second finding of fact, because the person seeking the variance isn't the property owner.
Right.
Okay, that works. Unnecessary hardship. Let's just strike that. Can we strike the first sentence? Because I think that allowing for wayfinding is going to be, I think that's sufficient.
So on the third finding of fact, you're wanting to, or you're requesting that first sentence be removed. It says the business will be able to install signage that is compliant with the property owner's specific criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it problematic because it's implying that the property owner's like specific criteria takes precedence over the city's zoning regs?
Yes.
Is that? Yeah.
That's my view
I
on
can
this.
see that. To maybe something along the lines of, well, we see your specific signage criteria. Let's, to the extent that that your criteria are responsive to the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, or something like that.
Could you repeat that?
Well, so we don't want to create the appearance that the property owner's specific signage criteria take precedence or legal force, greater legal force than do the city's zoning regulations. So we just need a way to phrase it so that it's clear that the zoning regulations are primacy and take priority, and have, in terms of what's what's legal and what's followed with regard to what the requirements are. It's the city, and then, all right, we have this property owner or tenant basically coming before the city proposing we want to do this, but we're going to do it in such a manner that we're being answerable to what the city has laid out, basically.
Okay, well, my
Yeah.
suggestion is, in order to make this sentence, it seems like to comply, the business will be able to install signage that is compliant with the, strike the word property owner and put city's specific criteria.
But it won't be compliant.
Well, or just add to the extent that these or insofar as these criteria.
I mean, I would be more than, I think it's more than evident that the hardship and the need for the illumination on this kind of building is just wayfinding.
The second sentence.
I think the first sentence is immaterial to the actual hardship.
So the hardship would, there's an added
I'm
benefit.
good on striking it, I don't,
Yeah, I say strike first sentence.
okay, so what do you want to do with the fourth?
Fourth?
Can we add while meaning city zoning regulations as well as the requirements of the property owner?
The fourth, I think I'm actually good with.
You're all right with that now?
Yeah, because I don't, the tenants entered into a lease and balancing that with the city, yeah, it's just.
And two, technically, it's the property owner coming before us, or the tenant coming before us for the variance, not the.
Yeah.
Do you, speaking of signage, again, with this particular, there's no monument. It's just on the facade, right? They're not proposing, even maybe later on, like monument style
There is
along the right of way?
There is a very small monument that does meet, well, has been varianced
Right.
for the city, because it is internally illuminated as well.
Right.
It is located on the sheet side
Right,
of the
at that
property.
corner.
They do have an application in with the city to put vinyl on that, and it's 3 square feet of verbiage.
Yeah, we approved that
All right,
a while back.
okay, just to touch on that.
Yeah. Putting the new copy on won't require any other review, since the monument itself and the way it was set up has
It's
already
already
been.
been taken care of?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then, I mean, we have underground print, it's similar to
Yeah.
underground printing in terms of the internal illumination. It's nothing that's unusual.
Right.
Will this one be on a timer, just out of curiosity?
It would be similar to
Or
underground
voltaic.
printings because it, once again, goes to the property owner's preference. I'm not sure if this is on, I'm not sure if I've driven by this at night. That's to actually
'Cause-
speak on what the building looks like at after hours.
Right.
Because after hours,
It's-
I guess, would be the major concern of that.
Right. I think it's got a low light impact during the nighttime hours in general. It's not lit up like a, and then again, the materials, it's industry standard that's suited to the internal illumination. So,
So I move that we accept the findings of fact as amended with the removal of the one line, as in the packet with the removal of the one line.
and I will second that motion. When we're referencing the first sentence in the third finding of fact on page 27 of the meeting packet, again, we want to note no conditions proposed by planning, and they're not offering any commentary, which is customary with signage cases. So, we have a motion to accept the finding of facts seconded by the chair. How do we vote?
Aye.
We are going to accept the findings of facts for this case number. This is VA, let me get to the, VAR, I'm sorry, 24-136 at 1046 University Avenue. Do we have a motion to grant this variance?
I move to grant the variance.
I second.
We have a motion to grant the variance for this reference case with a second by Ms. Cook. Mr. Schombacher, seconded by Ms. Cook. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Miller, we've granted your variance. Thank you again for coming down this evening. As you well know, you oversee the correspondence from the city 7 to 10 business days, and our decision can be appealed Circuit Court of Montague County. And just keep in mind that any work you or your client conducts in that 30-day period is at your client's sole financial risk. Thanks again for coming down.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving. There are 3 separate cases, but they're all related to one proposal. So these are VA 24-146, Brewston Farm Services, Inc., 15 Brookhaven Road. Request by Mr. Penix on behalf of Brewston Farm Services, Inc. for variance relief from Article 1347.04A2 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding the maximum setback requirement for principal structures, City Tax District 14 in the 6th Ward, Tax Map 45, parcels 5.2, 6, 7, and 7.4 in the B2 Service Business District. The second variance is referenced as VAR 24-145, also Brewston Farm Services, Inc., 15 Brookhaven Road, request by Mr. Penix on behalf of Brewston Farm Services, Inc. for variance relief from Article 1347.04B of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding the location of an accessory structure in the front setback, City Tax District 14, also tax map 45, parcels 5.2, 6, 7, and 7.4, also in the B2 Service Business District. And then the last reference variance request is for VAR 24-147, Brewston Farm Services, Inc., 15 Brookhaven Road, request by Mr. Penix on behalf of Brewston Farm Services, Inc. for variance relief from Article 1367.08 C1 regarding providing a 10-foot buffer for the length of any parking area abutting a street, City Tax District 14, 6th Ward, Tax Map 45, again parcels 5.2, 6, 7, and 7.4 in the B2 Service Business District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for reading all those into the record. Appreciate that. And if it's okay with the board, I'll go ahead and present a combined staff report since everything's related to the site plan. So again, I have many of the pictures that were in your packet up here on the screen for reference. But the applicant, Brewston Farm Services, has submitted plans to redevelop approximately 1.7 acres of land along Brookhaven Road into a new mini-mart gas station and drive-through facility. In doing so, BFS has submitted a Type 2 site plan for review. Proposed improvements to the site include the construction of an approximately 6,000 square foot building for the convenience store and fast food service operation, as well as 6 fuel pump stations with 12 nozzles and a canopy. The picture on the left is an aerial image from the county's parcel viewer map. The image on the right shows the city's zoning map, and I just wanted to highlight that a couple other things. We've been working with BFS for some time now, and they've been great partners to work with on the project. There was actually additional property acquired and able to this project to come to fruition, and a portion of it was already outside of the city limits. They worked with the city and staff to bring that portion of property inside the city limits and then to zone it to the appropriate zoning designation, which had been approved previously by the Planning Commission years ago.
So just point of clarification then,
Yes,
a
sir.
portion of the parcel was already within city limits. It was just a relatively small area that
Yes, there was
fell
a,
outside.
correct, yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but it's this section, and this is not accurate, it's just an aerial view, but it's basically this general area. In your, I don't know if it would be shown in the packet with the site plan provided, but it's a very small area. But they went ahead and petitioned the city to bring it into the corporation limits.
Thank you for clarifying that, because
Sure.
just in the reading the packet, it was my impression that it was the entire parcel that lay outside city limits.
No, sir, the map on the right-hand side shows the city limits, so everything that's in color is in the city limits and has a zoning designation. It's that small portion at the bottom left corner of the site, southwest corner of the site,
In
that,
the neon, within the neon
Correct.
area?
Yep.
Or the,
So
not
what's-
delineated
I just wondered why they had to, just that little peak portion of land, what was the advantages of bringing it into the city limits and the corporation?
in looking at project site development, there'd been two sets of regulations. There'd be a set of regulations apply from the county and then a different set for the city. So in terms of looking at the project site as one piece of property, and we appreciated the applicant bringing that into the city and,
Okay.
and cleaning that up.
And maybe also from a property tax
I-
assessment standpoint too, just to
Yeah.
smooth that out?
Sure,
Yeah.
well, we appreciate that.
That makes sense. All right, thank you, Mr. Yeager.
Okay. We'll go on to-
Do we have any other questions? No. Thank you for addressing the annexation issue, because yeah.
Sure. And then after review and looking at the planning and zoning conformity report and looking at, you know, the program for the property as well as the proposed improvements, the applicant is requesting a variance relief from 3 sections of the planning code. One is dealing with the fuel station canopy that's in the front of the principal building, which by code is not permitted, but again, you can go all over town and see examples of where, I mean, it makes sense sometimes to have the canopy in the front, and given the geography and configuration of this site and the accessibility, that made reasonable sense. The second is the maximum setback from for the principal structure of 30 feet. The actual distance is closer to 100 feet, again, going from Brookhaven Road, the right-of-way here, all the way back to the principal structure. The code says it should not be set back more than 30 feet. But again, when you're looking at the way that the site needed developed and the site constraints, this is what was put forward. And then the other is the requirement of a 10-foot landscape buffer. A buffer is being provided that is 10 foot wide, so it meets that requirement. But because of the requirement also to have sidewalks, even though there's not sidewalks really in this area, the applicant went ahead and put in a 6-foot concrete sidewalk and is proposing to use the remainder for the landscaping requirement.
Okay.
And there are other examples in town where those 10-foot buffers have been shrunk by variance, but we're happy that the applicant was willing to work with us and to provide the sidewalk and provide the landscaping. So that's why they're technically asking for that variance in that specific location. And then this, I should have, that shows where the 3 variance requests or references what the variance requests are. It's the maximum setback for the principal structure. It's the location of the accessory canopy structure in front of the principal structure, and it's the 10-foot buffer requirement for landscape materials. And that will conclude staff's report.
Okay.
Thank you. With regard to accessory structures, did you want to ask that question?
No, I just wanted to come up and tell them.
Oh, okay. Well, I had a question regarding, what's the definition of accessory structure? Because to be honest, it's not, I mean, it's a canopy, it's not enclosed, but it's still, the canopy still falls under the definition of accessory structure then.
Correct, because it's not attached physically to the principal building.
Even though it's not enclosed space,
Correct.
It's just a canopy. All right.
So in terms of the zoning code, for instance, on a residential piece of property, a pergola would be considered an accessory structure. It's not attached to the single-family dwelling, it's separate. Or if you build a patio or in your backyard that was not attached to the house or a deck, and it was a standalone, that would be considered an accessory structure.
All right, thanks.
You're
Just
welcome.
addressing that, making it clear that the canopy meets definition of accessory structure.
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have a representative for this case? Any other questions?
But,
Mr. Shelburne?
No.
Thank you. Just state your name and address for the record.
Howard Howard Goodstein, 116 Shannon Drive, Morgantown. So Ricky did a great job of kind of summarizing what we're asking for, and really it's nothing that hasn't been granted dozens of times, I guess, over the course of the years. I mean, as Ricky said, you can drive around town and see canopies at convenience stores in between the main road and the main structure. I mean, there's a few right on Route 7 as well, with the Sheets, with Kroger's, with our other location. The setback being more than 30 feet, again, another necessity required by the configuration of the property, and is also a very common practice and around town. The one right before us was 80 feet off of the right-of-way. And then the third one is the sidewalk, which was a recommendation from the city, and I believe the landscape person with Morgantown was their idea that we put in the sidewalk and the landscape buffer, and as a combination, get to 10 feet so we don't start pinching traffic. Was everybody's concern that we start narrowing up driving lanes. So, those are the reasons for the three requests. The configuration of the property kind of dictates it, along with industry practices and standards of how you build convenience stores. It's not necessarily some trade secret out there of how you do these things. So it's going to be a convenience store with a Dairy Queen. It's going to be the fast food end cap on it. So if you have any questions.
So I think, as you said, it's industry standards. It's best practices.
Yeah,
This site is being developed in accordance with industry standards and just best practices. This is what, and it's an unusually configured space. You're trying to, I like the idea that you're giving, in terms of the sidewalk, that's a nod to the potential for, it's primarily vehicular traffic, but there's going to be pedestrian traffic too. Especially given that it's not too far from, the bike path is not too far.
Right, so at some point, this sidewalk might go
Maybe
somewhere.
bicyclists there, you're taking all the variables and you're trying to maximize basically public safety, especially since it's a fuel station. So, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. And that's just for the record, just reference these again, VA 24, 140-145, 146, and 147. Now is your opportunity to speak. Sir, would you? Seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing.
After review, staff had no comments or modifications for the findings of fact presented by the applicant, and after review, staff recommends that the variance request described above be granted as presented by the applicant. While the proposed improvements to the property may not be consistent with three specific development standards in the city's planning and zoning code, the location of some of the improvements are necessary to best utilize the property and circulate motorists throughout the site. With respect to the landscape buffer requirement, the city's urban landscape director was consulted and had no issues with the 10-foot buffer being comprised of a sidewalk and the appropriate landscape materials.
Thank you. And again, just to state specifically for the record, you're not proposing any conditions.
No, sir.
All right, so, let's see. Right, there is a set of findings of fact for each requested variance, for dash 145, dash 146, dash 147. Do we have any questions regarding the findings or discussion for the findings of fact 24-145. I would just like to note that, you know, there is the park and ride facility adjacent to this parcel or this proposed project. This is, I mean, it's a complementary land use, I would say. It's not as if, you know, it's a residential district that's located adjacent to the project area. And I'm glad that that's referenced in that first finding of fact on page 39 of the meeting packet.
So I move that we accept the findings of facts for VR 24-145, as stated in the packet.
On page 39.
Yep.
I will second that motion, unless, are you comfortable with everything there? It's
Pretty straightforward.
pretty straightforward.
It's an oddly configured site, and they're not doing anything incredibly non-conforming,
Right.
so.
The only other, I mean, it's not gonna change any of, the only other layout I could see would be putting the principal structure off to the left, but the canopy still
Right.
sited at the front, so. All right, so we have a motion to accept findings of fact for VR 24-145, referenced on page 39, seconded by me. How do we vote? Do we vote to accept the findings of fact for?
Aye.
We're accepting the findings of fact for the first variance, -145. Second set of findings of fact referenced on page 41 for VR 24-146. Similar findings of fact.
Right.
Okay, I move that we accept the findings of fact for VR 24-146.
Second.
How do we
You
vote?
can have it. Aye.
Aye.
So, well, we have a motion by Mr. Benison, seconded by Ms. Cook, Mr. Schaumbarger, and we voted to accept. The
Who's
last.
the first and second again? I wrote it down.
Take London.
We'll give it to
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schaumbarger. Last set of findings of fact, referenced on page 43 of the meeting packet. These relate to VAR 24-147. I mean, I'd just like to speak to the truth of the second finding of fact, that the required 10-foot landscape buffer and 6-foot sidewalk would prevent adequate traffic flow. I mean, you're still making an allowance for a sidewalk and making an allowance for the landscaping that's makes sense given the unusual configuration of the parcel. I like that you're making an allowance for pedestrians. I mean, it's required, but just given where your parcel is located, it's close to the bike path. It's not immediately adjacent to a residential area, but there are residential areas up Brookhaven Road, which you know your proposed project, you know, in terms of the food service, it's a nice match. It's not immediately adjacent to a residential area, but I'm glad that you're making an allowance. You know, it's vehicular traffic, but you're making allowance for the pedestrian. And I think your proposed project, it's maximizing public safety, to be honest. It's both, it's a nod to both vehicular and pedestrian traffic, which I think is very appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
So, do we have, I mean,
Yeah, I'll move that we accept the findings of facts for VR 24-147.
and also kudos to you working with the landscape architect from the city too.
It worked, yeah, make it
So,
work.
all right, so we have a motion to accept, are you comfortable with everything?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the findings of fact for this last variant, VAR 24-147, referenced on page 143. And I will go ahead and second that. So we have a motion and second to accept the findings of fact for this last variance. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. We've accepted the findings of fact. Do we have any other comment?
No, sir, we'll need to go back and do the, grant the variance relief, though.
Yes, I agree.
We will, but no conditions, just to state that for the record. So I move that we've accepted all the findings of fact. There are no conditions referenced for these three variance requests. So I move that we grant the variances requested for VAR 24-145, -146, and -147.
I second.
We have a motion seconded by Mr. Schombarger to grant this variance for these three variance requests. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have granted your request for your three variances. You will receive written notification from planning in generally 7 to 10 business days. Keep in mind that this, or our decision, can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Miami-Dade County. Any work you conduct or undertake in that 30-day window is at your sole financial risk. Thank you for coming down this evening, and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening. All right, so do we have any announcements?
Just the staff would announce that we do have several items on the agenda for the next meeting. So we will be meeting in September, and just appreciate all of you being able to make it tonight and participate and be able to conduct the meeting. We appreciate your service.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to considering those cases as we head into the fall. All right, so I move that we adjourn this meeting for Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, 6:30 p.m.
A second.
Yep.
Oh.
So
He's calling it.
adjourned.
Okay, got it.
We are so adjourned.